We have provided power for humans to change the trajectory of a warming planet.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lauren Hurst. Welcome to today's conversation. I'm here with Aubrey Paris. Aubrey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Thanks for being with us today. Now, you work with the Office of Global Women's Issues, and today we were talking about seaweed farming. So tell us a little bit about your office and specifically Innovation Station. Tell me about that.
Well, the Secretary's Office of Global Women's Issues is focused on promoting the rights and empowerment of women and girls through U.S. foreign policy. But in the context of the conversation that we're having here today, I'm really focused on our work at the nexus of gender equality and climate change. Really, in the case of fisheries, seaweed, and aquaculture, thinking about the role that women play in these industries that have such an important impact on climate change, but are also affected by climate change.
That's right. And one of the things you see in climate change, for people that study that, is that a lot of the impacts are falling disproportionately on women.
Absolutely. They're the first ones witnessing the challenges, and oftentimes women are the first ones developing the solutions. And that really is where the Innovation Station initiative comes into play. So the Innovation Station is my office's effort to identify and amplify women and girls developing creative but translatable solutions to climate-related challenges in their community. And I know we have some really interesting women in our Innovation Station network that are super relevant to our conversation topic today.
Yeah, today we're talking with Bree Warner, and Bree is the CEO of Atlantic Sea Farms.
Yes.
Now, Atlantic Sea Farms is a great company up in Maine, located right on the coast in Portland. I was up there not too long ago myself, and people think of Maine and they think of lobsters, right? And so that's been a huge industry for them for a long time. Now, climate change is impacting Maine in a big way.
Yeah.
And they are looking at how do they deal with that? How do they sustain their economies? And how do they really build resilience into their coastal communities? Because all of these communities depend on fisheries, for a lot of their economic gains. And Bree is at the forefront of that.
Absolutely. I think that Bree has a great on-the-ground perspective of what it means to be a fisherman working in the context of climate change. And we're talking about Maine today, but I do feel the need to point out that that's just a case study. It's a microcosm. It's an example of a situation being experienced by fishermen all around the world.
That's right. And again, climate change is it's impacting everywhere in different ways.
Yeah.
Maine, for example, the Gulf of Maine, where, Bree's company is situated, is warming faster than anywhere else in the world right now.
In our recent conversation with her, I think she lays the foundation really well for understanding this challenge and how Atlantic Sea Farms is responding. So let's take a look.
It's a very well-preserved industry that has created sort of a boom in the lobster population, and created an atmosphere where we're actually seeing the lobster industry being the reason we have so many lobsters, not kind of this overfished industry that we often hear about in fisheries. Nonetheless, the Gulf of Maine is warming faster than 98% of oceans in the world. So it doesn't matter what conservation ethics that we have put in place. It does not matter what we have done to preserve the industry. Global climate change is going to affect the survival of lobster larvae so significantly that the industry is becoming already increasingly volatile and will at some point no longer exist in the way that it is now. And for the state of Maine, the effect of that is enormous. So we could do one of two things. We could stick our head in the sand and pretend it's not happening and continue just fishing as we are in a lobster monoculture and just hope that the rest of the world takes action and limits climate change and meets all of our emissions goals and the Gulf of Maine stops warming. I think that would be foolish for us to rely on that. Or we can start looking at diversification opportunities to diversify the sector in the face of climate change and develop kind of this hopeful proof of concept for people to do something different. And so I started working with the lobster industry about 9 years ago now. And about 4 years ago at this point, we started a company called Atlantic Sea Farms to enable fishermen to get involved in kelp farming as a diversification strategy in their off season. It's a winter crop. It's counter-seasonal to lobster, and it uses all of the same equipment or much of the same equipment that you use in lobster. So it's a perfect way for fishermen to diversify. It's been a journey of about now actually 5 years. And this is our 5th harvest season, and we have 40 partner farmers on the coast of Maine, Alaska, and Rhode Island. all growing kelp and basically developing an industry that didn't exist in the United States before.
So I think Bree made the case that there are a lot of challenges to contend with here when it comes to the ocean industries and fishing and aquaculture writ large.
Absolutely.
And it involves, to address the challenges, it'll involve engaging everyone with a role to play in these industries, which does include women. However, I want to prove a point for a second. Are you up for a little quiz?
Okay, give it to me, yes.
All right. So if I were to ask you what is the most famous, notorious ocean film of all time, what would you say?
Oh, well, that's an easy, that's Jaws, of course.
Okay.
Right?
You got the quiz answer correct. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Second, part two. How
Okay.
many women are the fishers in that movie?
Absolutely none. In fact, when I think of that movie, I think of Captain Quint. Okay, so that's Robert Shaw's character, the very hard-boiled and very crusty shark fisherman, the quintessential, man-conquering nature thing.
Right? It's very based on stereotype for what we expect of a person working in this industry. But stereotype is kind of based on reality to some extent.
That's right.
Women's roles in the fishing industries and the ocean industries writ large are extremely invisible, undervalued, and underappreciated. A lot of people don't know that women make up about 50% of those employed in the fisheries sector. But we don't see them because they work in post-harvest processing jobs.
Right.
We don't see them because policies are focused on boat-caught open ocean fish stocks instead of the intertidal zones where women are fishing. And that means that women are being left out of the conversation when it comes to fisheries, aquaculture, et cetera.
When you look at an industry like seaweed farming, okay, the importance of women being involved in that process is just such a huge thing, because they are part of the community and they play a very, very crucial role, but it doesn't get the recognition that it deserves, like you said.
Absolutely. Aquaculture is I would say, a newer component of the fisheries space by comparison. And because of that, there's more room for women to break into the space without having to physically shatter a glass ceiling. And I think that Atlantic Sea Farms is doing a lot to empower women and marginalized communities in aquaculture writ large. Should we throw to a clip?
Yeah, let's go ahead and see what Bree has to say about that.
I think the United States has an opportunity right now, when our aquaculture industry in general is so new and so nascent, to really be the leaders in sustainable aquaculture. And it's been amazing to see how many women are taking the lead in that. Atlantic Sea Farms were led by a woman who we produce over 80% of the farm seaweed in America right now. There's a company called American Unagi, also here in Maine, that is the first grow out facility for eels in the United States. We used to send all of our elvers to Japan for them to grow out. That's run by a woman. A redfish aquaculture business, the first one in the country, run by a woman. So, I think in some ways aquaculture presents an opportunity because there's no glass ceiling for women to have to crash through, because it is so new here in the United States. That it gives us the potential to really be leading the charge in something that's new and much more sustainable than anything else out there.
I can't help but feel like when Bree makes this case and we think about our own knowledge of this kelp space, that kelp aquaculture is, multiple birds with one stone, not just two. It's not just the environmental and the food. It's also this economic diversification and the potential for community development, community growth. There's a lot can be accomplished here. And it's all starting at the community level, which is really poetic, right? Because I feel like fishing is the quintessential example of an industry or a sector that started small and in many places remains small. So when you have these challenges, environmental, climate, or otherwise, engaging with communities on the ground is where those innovative solutions are first going to spawn out of.
That's right. And this really speaks to key themes that you see in sustainability, which are, say, for example, diversity. The more diverse economic base you have, the more resilient your community is going to be. And this is something that when you look at kelp farming, it's very much a community-driven type of enterprise. Yes. This is not something that, you could scale it and make a huge multinational type of, kelp farming operation. But in a lot of times, you're going to be better off if you do it at the smaller community level because they're more in tune with their local environments, which tend to change and there are different conditions. And you need that knowledge there on the ground to help those businesses work. So now Bree had some comments about the importance of communities as well. And this is very important for where she works up in Maine. So let's take a look.
The fishing industry here in Maine, but also everywhere where there's fishing communities, has been adapting for hundreds of years. And in some ways, one thing we miss when we talk about economic development is investing in the human potential that is so available to us. And in coastal communities throughout the world, people have been adapting forever. And they know climate change better than anyone because they are living it. People in deserted communities and people in coastal communities see the effects of climate change most acutely. And if we are able to empower people to make their own decisions, to make their families more resilient, their communities more resilient, and their environment more resilient in the face of climate change, we have provided power for humans to change the trajectory of a warming planet. Without giving people power and hope over their own future, we're going to keep doing the same things. And that's what I'm so proud of at Atlantic Sea Farms, is that it is everyday people who are leading the industry in the United States for the most climate-friendly food on the planet. And this is true in other areas where there is developed seaweed industries. Korea, for example. Korea has been facilitating a seaweed industry for the last 50 years by their government that is all run by cooperatives, small family community cooperatives, and they have scaled to 4 million tons of seaweed through empowering small-scale farmers throughout their coast. There is so many examples of communities taking hold of their future, and we're really excited to be part of that.
Now, Bree's comments are very interesting because, you and I work here at the State Department, right? And so we deal with global issues. We talk to people that are all over the world. But a lot of the programs that we manage that have to do with the blue economy, okay, through organizations such as USAID. These are indeed global programs, but the real impacts, the real work are happening at the community level, even one-on-one in villages, right there on the ground, and that's where the real impacts are being made.
Absolutely, and I'm really happy to be able to share with our audience that the State Department, USAID, and others in the U.S. government are actually taking action on this space for women in fisheries and aquaculture. So, for example, our colleagues over at USAID over in coastal West Africa have developed a program for women shellfishers that results in mangrove conservation and has food security and nutrition benefits as a result of this program.
Right.
Here at the State Department, we have a International Visitor Leadership Program, or IVLP, that is focused on women fishers in Indonesia and helping them to enhance their capacities in their fields, identify their challenges, and then empower them to develop solutions to their own on-the-ground climate challenges.
That's right, and that's what a lot of those programs do. Those are investments, okay, and those are funds, and those are that is expertise that we're providing that is going to help these people actually help build their own worlds, and which eventually is enlightened self-interest for just about anybody who's involved in these spaces.
Yeah, it's tangible, quantifiable impacts. It's stories of people's lives who are changed.
Well, that's just about all the time we have for today. So, Aubrey, any final thought? I mean, what do you see going forward for the seaweed farming space, and how that is a driver of innovation, to combat climate change and to address food security?
Like Bree, I'm really excited about the potential here. It's an industry or a sector that can really ramp up, and with innumerable benefits associated with it. And I think that when we look at the broader ocean industries as a whole, it's really a great case study in where we need to be focusing our efforts when it comes to the nexus of gender equality and climate change. We need to be addressing the challenges that affect women and girls and other vulnerable communities in the context of the climate crisis, like women fishers, etc. But we also need to be doing our part in empowering them as leaders in these transformative sectors.
That's about all the time we have for today. Now, for all of our viewers, I encourage you to check out more of this information and our conversation. Go to www.state.gov to learn more, and check us out on YouTube for this conversation and more. And we will see you next time. Thanks for being with us.